Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Times Convert read along. We've never really done a read along, but I'm really excited about this because Times Convert is one of my favorite books in the series. It was a real labor of love. It was so wonderful for me to take a deep dive into history, into the history of this country, and also the history of my own family. And I'll talk about that in a little minute. But more importantly, I started writing this book at a time when American history was really something that was very much part of contemporary politics, and that is still true today. And it was about this idea that somehow, where did we come from? And as a nation, how did we come to be? What was our origin story? And that is how you end up with the book Times Convert. I've got the special edition some of you may have gotten from Barnes & Noble or from Headline that has the extra deleted chapter. Here's the paperback. It is out in paperback. Blackbird Oracle is coming out in paperback in May if you want to pick it up. And of course it's on Kindle, but I don't have my Kindle with me. I do, however, have my Thirsty Goat mug. So for those of you who are looking for something to have your tea in while you do your Times Convert reading, always appropriate to have a little bit of Thirsty Goat with you. So Times Convert is above everything else an origin story. And it plays out three different origin stories at once. One of the origin stories is Phoebe Taylor becoming a vampire. So if any of you have been curious about how do Claremonts make vampires? How do they raise vampires? What is it like to be a vampire? This book will answer those questions, right? Because as we know from the first three books in the series, Phoebe has a real admiration thing going for Isabeau. You'll learn a lot about that in this book. She idolizes Isabeau. When she looks at Isabeau, she sees everything that she wants to be. So for Phoebe to become a vampire is a really important part in our ongoing story of the de Claremont family. And the second origin story is Marcus's origin story. So if you've ever wondered how Marcus became a vampire, what Matthew was like as a vampire father, how that brood in New Orleans came to be, this is the book that lays all of that out for you. And it does so because Phoebe's experiences and Marcus's concerns for Phoebe trigger his own memories. So we have Phoebe's experiences, we've got Marcus's memories of becoming a vampire, and those are two origin stories. The third origin story is, of course, that Marcus became a vampire against the backdrop of the origin story that was the American War for Independence. As a historian, I really believe that our context shapes us as a character. The experiences we go through, the ideals that we see, the disappointments that we have as a community, as a nation, all of these shape us in ways that we might not even be able to understand or notice. But it's an opportunity through the lens of fiction for me to talk a little bit about a very important moment in American history where this nation of separatists and disagreeable folks and people who hadn't been wanted elsewhere, in my case, that elsewhere was the Edinburgh toll booth, which is the prison in Edinburgh. My ancestors led a lovely little massacre in Enterkin Pass and ended up being on the lam and having to come to America in 1686, 87 as fleeing felons. So, people got here in very many different ways, but by the 1770s, we were in our embryonic nation status. We were a weird collection of misfits, criminals, indentured servants, slaves, wealthy planters, merchants from the Netherlands, from Scotland, from Ireland, from England, from Africa, from the Caribbean, all lumped into one area And then we decided to pick a fight with the king. And America went through some really profound birth pangs during that process. There were a lot of contradictions in the promissory notes that were the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And I say promissory notes because they were an establishment of ideals. And often, in reality, the ideals weren't being honored or met. They were only being honored and met for free white men. And that left an awful lot of America not part of those guarantees. And so we've got the story of a vampire who came of age in the Revolution, both American and then French, we'll get to in a little bit. We've got another vampire who's being reborn in a very different time, the present. And of course, don't forget, there's also not the origin story, but certainly the toddler story of Rebecca and Philip, the two twins of Matthew and Diana. So they're part of this whole story too. And one of the things you're going to learn in the beginning chapters as I set out what Marcus's childhood experiences are, what Phoebe's childhood experiences are as a vampire. And you can't even, for those of you who haven't read the book, I won't spoil for you who makes her a vampire, but let me just say, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy in Phoebe's household, and her mama's pretty formidable. But we're also learning a little bit about Philip and Rebecca, Pip and Becca, as I always refer to them, before the events you may have read about in Blackbird Arkle. So we learn in these opening chapters that not only are Marcus and Phoebe going through sort of coming of age stories, Diana and Matthew are grappling with the very real challenges that have to do with raising two mixed species children, Pip and Becca, and realizing that Becca has incredibly strong magical powers. For those of you who read the Blackbird Arkle, this may be an aha moment when you reread the book, or if you read it for the first time. You're going to see a lot of foreshadowing of the things that Pip and Becca go through in the Blackbird Arkle. So if you're wondering, well, where did this come from? Did I miss something? What's going on? I wish you could see Bridget's cat, Ducky. She is looking over at me and listening to me give this talk to you with this very interested, sleepy expression. So I really am looking forward to you guys rereading these first chapters of Times Convert all together and thinking about these themes of origin stories, of different origin stories, of coming of age stories, about how our time and our context shapes us. And you might want to ask yourself, or ask your family, ask your elders if you can, what was it like when they were growing up? How did the events of the time shape them? Or reflect on your own experience. Were you part of the duck and cover generation? Or were you part of another generation that experienced the challenges of growing up in a particular time and place and know that they've had some effect on you later on? So we're going to do another couple of these videos to just set the stage for the chapters you'll be reading, and then we're going to finish up strong with an Instagram Live on the anniversary of the battles of Concord and Lexington. So all perfectly planned. So enjoy your first dive into Times Convert, and we'll have another video for you next week. Bye for now.